But the Hispanic people not doing nothing bad. My dad didn't do nothing. He's not a criminal.
That was 11-year-old Magdalena 1 year ago today when Immigration, Customs and Enforcement raided several food processing plants in Mississippi.
In that video that's hard to forget, like many children on that day, she pleaded for the release of her dad.
I spoke with a clinical mental health therapist who has helped people in that community since day one about this trauma and its impacts, only to find out it also greatly affected her life as well.
I was working for Catholic Charities at that time, and I already had most of my caseload was mainly the Hispanic and Latino community and indigenous community as well. So when that happened, it was pretty much working with the crisis created by the ICE raids, because my clients started calling. I had a client that was supposed to show up and it didn't. So that's what I started, because it was very rare that would happen for that specific client, and that's how I found out what happened. It was like an attack where you don't know where everything is or what was going on or where to get the information. Clinically, I want to be more accurate and say that they're an acute stress disorder. The situation is not over yet. When someone has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's after it happened, right? A certain amount of time after it happened. And right now, they're still in crisis mode. Most of all, it's just the chaos around that day, what makes it so, and the pain. So in terms of children, they experience what we call traumatic separation that no one was expecting. When a child experiences this, there's a lot of guilt, because keep in mind that a lot of these children, they grew up here, they were born here, and they already have this in mind that they have to protect their parents because of the language barrier.
And this is a lot. And how has this impacted you and other folks who have been helping and having to deal with such a heavy caseload, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Whew. That's when it's hard for me to speak, right? Because after the raids, I survived a heart attack. And I say this publicly because one of the consequences of trauma, it's the somatic consequence of the somatic symptoms. The body knows what's going on, right? Me as a therapist, I was not allowed to stop, because at that time, I was the only bilingual trauma-informed therapy in the state of Mississippi. Every time I hear a mental health professional or a researcher talk about how families are separated, and this kind of situation that we're discussing today, their voice break, or they start crying. It just touches the core of the human being. It's a pain that every human being, no matter where they're from, their ethnicity or their background, we can all relate to the pain of losing a child, of losing a parent. I'm mentioning this because this is real. This happens to them and happens to me. And again, it can happen to any person who survives trauma.
Now, Melissa did not do interviews last year because she wanted to give all of her time to these people.
You and I both got a little bit of emotional there, and obviously it's tough to watch that, not only because of the kids, and we all remember, that experience, but I think it's so relevant today. Because there are people that are dealing with being separated from their family in the hospital when they're having babies right now because of the coronavirus, and it is mentally taxing on everybody.
So
I think
we talked about this yesterday, especially with our senior citizens in these nursing homes and hospice care. So it is a lot. It's a lot of it's hard. But this was such a great interview, and she was so well spoken. If you want to see the whole thing, you can find it on my Facebook page.